This is Heather White, CEO of Smarter Networking, and you're listening to the Academy's Developing Practice podcast.
Hello, in this episode we met up with Heather White, CEO of Smarter Networking. We explore how Heather networks effectively in a hybrid environment. We hope you enjoy.
Well, Heather, we're really pleased to be speaking to you today. We're delighted to be talking to you about how we can continue to network effectively in our new hybrid working environment. But before we get started, could you just tell us a little bit about your background and how you've arrived at the position you're in today?
Do you know, when you said that you were going to ask me that question, I was thinking to myself, how much do I actually tell you? Because I've got the most daftest career background you can ever imagine. So I'm thinking to myself, right, okay, I'll just tell you as it is, and then you can decide whether or not you want to edit it out or we're going to keep it in. So I've had 50 jobs in my career. And at the age of just over 40, I decided that, I was sacked from my job. And I decided I was going to start my own business. Now, when I come back to being sacked from my job, I mean, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. So thank you very much indeed, boss. But my boss absolutely hated me. You know, there's that personality clash sort of thing. So my boss went, bye-bye, Heather, we don't like you anymore. Can you go away? And I thought to myself, just turned 40, 41. And I thought, I'm going to set my own business up. Now, in those days, I was in private medical insurance. So I was not in this field, not even remotely. And I thought to myself, right, I'm going to set up my own business and I'm going to do my own thing. And I set my first business up, which was to do with employee benefits, because that was my field. And it was a complete disaster. So I raised funds, not enough, raised some funds, and it was a mess. And it was just a disaster. Anyway, the reason why it was such an important stage, though, was because that was the reason why I set up Smarter Networking, because the first business, which was employee benefits, which failed. But one of the reasons why it failed was because I was useless at networking, didn't know nothing about it. So I'd left Southampton, I'd moved up to London, had no contacts apart from one business card. And it was that one business card that actually saved my life, basically. So I started doing networking with an organization called BNI. And thought this world of networking was just delicious. I mean, honestly, I loved it. It's like I'd come home. So I couldn't suddenly start running a business on networking because I didn't know what I was doing. So I joined London Chamber of Commerce, and my job was to recruit people. And everyone says, I'm saying, why do you want to join London Chambers? They're all talking about network. And I'm again, so who do you want to network with? A majority of people were worse than me. So that's when I thought to myself, there's a market here. And I thought, right, I'm going to learn my trade. And that's basically in 2001, that's how I started Smarter Networking. And then I think it was probably about 3-4 years ago, I then started up this other service called Boardroom Ready, which is where I do matchmaking. So today I either teach people how to network or I'm networking for people.
What were you doing before that? I mean, 50 jobs is a lot of jobs. What sort of area were you in?
Okay, so this goes from doing, I think my shortest time was 1 day and my longest was something like 5 years. So, and I went from manufacturing to retail to encyclopedias. I even sold encyclopedias at one point.
Wow.
Used to sell
door to door?
Yeah. So this is going back to, blimey, a long time ago, really long time ago. And I'd left this retail service, which actually I did bath taps, bathrooms and things like that. And I went to sell encyclopedias. And that's because my boss, when I was selling taps, wouldn't let me sell. I was a female.
Right.
Can you believe that? So this is going back a little while. And I wasn't allowed to sell. I was in the office and I wanted to go into the showroom. So anyway, so they sort of said, no, you're not allowed to do that. So I said, right, okay, well, I'm not into this. So I left, which is typical of me, actually. If I don't get my own way, I sort of leave. And I thought to myself, I'll go and sell encyclopedias. Well, I ended up selling encyclopedias. I lasted 5 days, which is really good. So like I said, I've been in manufacturing, encyclopedias, retail, private medical insurance, occupational health, drinks. I used to work for one of the drink production people down in Southampton. So yeah, I've done all sorts of things.
Yeah, really varied, really varied. I can see why that probably led you to start your own company, actually, because you're going to draw from a lot of different experiences, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people, when I went self-employed, a lot of people went, well, it was obvious you were going to do that. But in my head, you couldn't. No way was I even remotely think about it. I had no role models. I didn't know anybody who was self-employed. Didn't know a thing, not a thing. And that's one of the reasons why the first business failed, was because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. But it was because I was going to all these networking events that I learned so much from role models, people who were running their own businesses. And that's when I was thinking, well, they do this and they do this and they do this. And I mean, I learned so much. It's brilliant.
And what was it, Heather? Because Matt's just turned the big 40. I'm 41. And I think working in HE, when you get to your 40s, there's very much a feeling that you're on this conveyor belt, and you keep moving in a certain direction. But obviously at the age of 40, you're saying, I mean, I know you got the sack, which was probably a good nudge, but what gave you the courage to go, okay, I'm just going to do something completely different. I'm going to look at maybe my skill set, look at what's going on and actually respond to that. What gave you the courage to make that change?
Actually, it wasn't courage. I think the word stupidity is probably better. But I mean that in a positive way, actually, because when you're ignorant, it's a good thing. And my driver was, I didn't want to go back into the corporate world. I just thought going back into another job, I just couldn't bear the thought of it, to be honest with you, because I'd had some not very good experiences. So whilst I might sound flighty to some, there were, with a lot of them, there were actually good reasons why I left. I mean, a couple I was made redundant, and some of them was because of a culture that's not acceptable, let's put it that way. And so ignorance is good. So my driver was desperation to find another way of doing work, another way of existing. I mean, I coach a lot of people nowadays, funny enough, in the career transition stage. So you two are at very exciting times in your life. And, today, I mean, compared to when I was, so dare I say, it was over 20 years ago since I left the corporate world. So you can work out the maths. But nowadays, to be honest with you, there is so much that you can do. I mean, it's unbelievable what anyone can do. I mean, you've got internet successes, haven't you? Where there are Instagrams and Pinterest and Facebook, and people like that who make YouTube where they make a fortune. I mean, I haven't worked that bit out yet, but so do whatever you want. Where's your heart? Just go for it.
It's interesting. One of my friends who lives locally, she's just resigned from her position as a lawyer because she's now making equal money through an Instagram account. Just amazing what you can do. Stuff that, I mean, we were never trained for when we were, training at university. It's very, very different.
No, it's absolutely true. And this is, I mean, when I talk to people nowadays, and they're often in this career transition stage. So there's a lot of people becoming coaches, which I think is great. I mean, one has to be really, really clear about your expertise and your specialism. I think the challenge for some people is that what you've got to do is you've got to work out for you as a personality, what do you need? Where do you get your energy from? So for me, I get my energy from other people. I'm an extrovert, as you can tell. And so I feed off other people. So networking was a great thing. I mean, absolutely awesome. I've always been in sales, but I don't like selling hard stuff. I mean, I've done the encyclopedias, I've done the telephone sales, and it's not my gig. So networking is that soft way of finding and building and developing, which I absolutely love. But, since the lockdown and stuff, I never knew that I would actually totally love meeting people this way. I mean, I love it. And I don't think I'm ever going to leave my shed again. I'm going to stay down here and talk to Zoom forever and ever and ever.
Fantastic.
Well, you've mentioned lockdown, and it's fair to say that the world has significantly changed over the last 12 months in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And the way we work in the university continues to evolve and change, I mean, massively over the last 12 months. So can you tell us about some of the ways that you've had to change in relation to the way that you work personally?
Yeah, I mean, my last working day in London was the 9th of March. Remember it well. And I remember coming back home and feeding off the news. I remember saying to my PA, look, let's cancel my appointments just for a couple of weeks, see where this thing is actually going to go. And that was the last time I was in London. And I have to say, initially, I was utterly lost. I was bemused. I was confused. To be honest, I didn't even know who I was. My whole identity, which I hadn't quite realised, was wrapped up in dashing into London, doing lots and lots of teas and coffees, dinners, going to networking events, teaching, training. And then overnight, it stopped. So I wasn't what you call a doctor, where I just jumped into the technology and I did this. I went and painted my shed and my fences outside because I just didn't know what to do. I really didn't. I was utterly confused. So it took me quite some time to get into, well, who am I if I'm not presenting to a group of people? And it took a little while for me to get the energy as well. However, it took me about 6 months. So I was quite lucky. I didn't need to move particularly fast. I could do it in my own time. I was in a good place in that sense. And then it just took me a little while to work out what the heck I was going to do and how was I going to do my business. But one of the things I wanted to achieve was to make a transition. I've been thinking about it anyway. So my life was running around like a complete lunatic, probably too much so. And this has actually helped me make the transition from always in London to being majority of the time from home and actually coming into London as and when I need to. And I'm still not in any rush to go back, to be fair. So therefore, everything now is, as we all are, is online. And to be absolutely honest, I've actually not noticed the difference. And that might sound a bit bizarre.
Well, it is interesting, especially with networking. I mean, our HR director said recently in an open meeting about it's easy to maintain a relationship through Zoom, but it's not necessarily the same to initiate a relationship through Zoom. Do you agree with that, or have you seen something completely different in your area?
No, I tell you, I 100% disagree. Now, this is an extrovert speaking, so you've got to be really clear on this one. I'm not an introvert. I'm not shy. I'm not lacking confidence. I am out there. Now, so my business is about finding a lot of people I don't know, strangers. Okay. And I do majority of my activity through LinkedIn and through recommendations. So I have met more people, I think, strangers, on a one-to-one basis than I've ever done in my 20 years as running my business. So I completely get, 100% get, there are those that need that one-to-one physical contact. I 100% get that. However, I also 100% know, and it's proven that we can do near enough everything through the screen. Yeah. Absolutely. People want to engage, people want to talk, they want to exchange. So, but there are differences, but those differences aren't wrong differences. They're not bad differences, they're just differences. Okay, so I've had to learn not to get past that yearning for I need to be out there. So I must admit, what I've personally done, I've translated my yearning into my bubble, people that I can socialize with in my village. Okay, so I've sort of transferred all of my energy into those face-to-faces. And then from a business perspective, I'm 100%, I have not noticed any difference in talking to strangers and building a relationship. Not one iota of difference. Now, there are differences, but not bad differences. So I can still build the trust. I can still take the conversations where I want to go. But the differences is that some conversations are shorter than what they would have been. Because there's more transactional conversations rather than that chitty chat. But I think for all of us, we've got to learn what are those soft touches. I was doing a session the other day for a client, and if you go back to when we did face-to-face coffee, what were the icebreakers that we used to do? So they would have been, love the shoes that you're wearing, Alex, through to nice tie you got on there, Matt, to this is a great coffee shop, haven't been here before. You would make an observational comment to break the ice, and then you sit down, what coffee do you want, tea you want, and then you gradually get into the conversation. Some people want more social stuff, and other people want to get on with, let's talk about why we're here. There's no difference. I mean, I was talking to this guy before coming on here, and as soon as his screen come on, clearly the wife or someone had sent them flowers. I mean, it looked like he was in a greenhouse. And so I just go straight into, I mean, this is within seconds of him coming on. As soon as his screen opens up, I went, wow, look at that greenhouse. Look at those flowers. Aren't they awesome? And I would have done nothing different to if we were meeting face to face. So I'm saying, so I'm coming closer to the screen going, are they fuchsias back there? Oh, I bet that smell must be gorgeous. So we just chatted, and then he's going, so where are you based? And so you just use the environment around you in order to create the same exchange as you would have done. I was talking to another guy last night, and he's bang, get on with it. Bang, bang, bang. We were 10 minutes on the phone, but we still got where we wanted to get to. So no, I think if we try to insist that we go back to the way that it was, then I think we're making a mistake.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm interested in hearing how that then translates to your work around networks. So if I think about some of the networks that I run at the university across the institution, when we all moved to home working, all of those networks moved online overnight, like literally overnight. And obviously, I've now had time to embed some of those networks. And I think a little bit like you're saying, I would never now go back. I mean, there is some value in some face-to-face work, but I'm loving what we're doing online. I think it works for people working in HE as well, in terms of developing those networks synchronously and asynchronously online. So I just wondered if you could tell us a bit about the work you've been doing in regard to supporting networking in a kind of hybrid working environment.
Okay, so there's a couple of things here. I think, because I do a lot of work with business schools, and there are certain situations where I think it's absolutely vital that we do eventually get back to face-to-face stuff. Because one thing's for sure is that having 20 people on a call versus 20 people in a room, there's a distinct difference. So when I talk about I don't notice the difference, I am talking about one-to-ones. Okay, now if you're then looking at group situations, the dynamic is without a doubt different. When I was teaching, well, I still do teach networking skills, but one of the questions that comes up 100% of the time when I was doing it, when I was actually in a group of people, was how do you break into a group? That was a bit that came up 100%. And I know I could talk to a chief exec and I could be talking to students, they all ask the same question. Now, in basics, you would go eye contact, move in, chat, in basics. Now, one of the problems is that people were nervous over, but what do you talk about? How do you know what they're talking about? So one of the great delights about being on a screen is that you know exactly what conversations are going on. So that's really good news. However, the difficulty when you're in a group situation online is that when do you jump in? And what happens if you've got dominant people? What happens if you're a real strong introvert? It's there are some challenges around that, but those challenges are just different challenges to what we used to do when we did in group situations. So it's just a case of, how do you work around that? So, yes, I've been doing lots of stuff online and everything. But I suppose what I've tried to do is to make it normal. I think this has been the challenge, isn't it? There was a point when, like I sort of said earlier on, is that when it first happened, I lost my whole identity. I just didn't know who I was. And then I went into, well, do you know, if this is going to carry on for a while, why don't I make this normal in my head and in my emotions as much as in the way that it's going to work? And in a group, there's always the dominant, there's always the gregarious, there's always the chatter, there's always the shy, there's always the introvert, there's always the clumsy one. The characters are always there.
I think there is exactly what you're saying around this kind of normalizing what is normal. So pre-COVID, meeting online like this, it was so unnormal, wasn't it? Whereas now I think kind of with, we're a year on, it has become normal, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And the introvert, the extrovert, the clumsy one, people know how to interact now online to maybe get the best of themselves in a networking context.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not going to get back to pre-COVID anytime soon. And even when we do get back to whatever that normal is going to be, there, without a doubt, we're going to have this blended approach, aren't we? Because, a lot of people, there's so many cost savings in doing it this way versus getting into a group and doing all of that stuff. And I understand the hunger that people have to get back into that. But it's not going to be the same as was, because there's too many inequalities around the jab and the environments and everything else like that. So I sort of think, let's get on with what do we want to create? This is an opportunity that we could really take advantage of massively. Do you remember, sorry, I'll chat for ages on this one, but do you remember, students used to turn around and say, my problem is I'm living in I'm sort of coming over to the UK, I'm doing my studying over here, but all my contacts are back in China and Russia and Italy and Spain and wherever else. And how do I keep those relationships going? And they always felt like the poor part of the relationship when it comes to networking. Well, of course, now they are the ones who really got it. So now, I was talking to this guy over in South Africa, was it this week? No, New Zealand. And it was awesome. That's 12 hours difference. It was 6 o'clock in the morning his side. It was 7 o'clock in the evening my side of it. And we were having a good old natter. And I was thinking, this is phenomenal. Do you know what I mean? I just sort of think, this is great.
I'm going to ask a bit of it's a personal question for me, because I am not an extrovert. I sometimes think I flip between extrovert and introvert, depending on the situation I'm in. So, for example, I'm going to seek your advice here. So let's say I'm at a conference. I'm very comfortable being at a table and having a conversation with around 5 or 6 people. But once you go out into that bigger room, say you have those tea and coffee breaks, and it's sort of organized networking. So it's like, okay, go and get a cup of coffee and go speak to somebody. Then I go very introverted, and I just do not want to break into anybody else's conversation and introduce myself. It just feels completely alien to me. So what would your advice be in that situation?
So now, whilst I'm an extrovert, I hate large groups, and I don't do it. So, right, I think it's really important to play to your character and your strengths. When we go back to networking at events, you've got to make it as comfortable as possible. Right. So therefore, if we're doing the teas and coffees where there's 2 or 3 people, it's great to have a nice chat. And then they say, right, okay, go and play. What I always tend to do is I look for small groups, because when everyone stands up, they'll be in groups of, say, well, you go from, obviously you've got one standing on their own, but you've then got 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, and 7s. Now, I will go to a maximum of 3. I won't go into the 4s and the 5s. Now, the reason why I won't do a 4 is because I make the 5th. The second you make the 5th, then quite often the group will break anyway. So therefore, I'm just as happy going into my 3. But 2s and 3s are my preferences. And that's from someone who's a gregarious person. The reason is because I sort of feel that when you go into bigger groups, quite often, the group will split, but also then you've still got the dominant and the other dominant. and they're chatting away, and then you've got everyone else looking at them as though they were presenters. Okay, no one else really sort of stands a chance anyway. So I'd much rather go in and have easy going chats rather than try and strain myself over trying to get in when I need to. I think one of the sub question around this one really is, who do you actually want to go and talk to, and how important is this person in the context of the room? So if it's just more random stuff, just go and say hello, meet some people and have nice chats, and then definitely look at the size of the group, but also look at the dynamic of the group. Now, I must admit, if I was to, I would avoid what I call still people on my initial round. And the reason for that is because still people quite often, not always, quite often depict introverts. So I tend to look for a flappy group, which can be a lot of women actually. But I look for an animated group, if you like, where there is gestures going on. I mean, as you can see, I know we're doing a podcast here, but I'm flapping my hands around all the time. Okay, I have to be really careful when I'm doing my own interviews because I have to sit on my hands. I am a movement person. I'm a gesture person. So I tend to look for characteristics that on the face of it look like me. Right. So what you can do is look for the characteristics in a group that make you feel comfortable, and then go and join the group. Yeah, and then as you build your confidence, or when you feel more comfortable, whatever works for you, then you can then start going into the ones that look different. Now, one of the tricks of the trade here is that I think everyone needs to practice being with people that are not like them. So what I do is I go into my more gregarious group, and then what I will do is actually I'll then go and join a more considered group, a more what looks to be a quieter group, because it's important for me to not just network with people like me, but to actually broaden those networks out. So one of the other things is, you know, people who are different to me will be tall. I mean, I'm a short person. You can't tell when I'm sitting down, but actually I'm a little person. So I would go and talk to tall people. I would also go and talk to people who just come across as intimidating. You know, you'll have your own perceptions of what that means. But in order for me to be confident, most of my decision makers are normally quite intimidating people. So it's one of my ways of keeping myself fresh with my skill sets is by talking to people that are just not like me.
And how does that translate, Heather, over into kind of the online environment? So we've been working a little bit on this in the university, thinking about networking maybe at conferences or network events, and using kind of online tools to help people to artificially network. Matt, tell us about the tool that you were using where there's a bar and table.
Yeah. So to try and get people out of Zoom calls and Teams meetings and things, these were particularly for the new starters at the university. There's an online space called Kumo Space, where people come on into a room and they can move their video heads around a room, and say if they move around, they can like, a group of people can go over to the bar, a group of people can go over to the swimming pool, some people can go over to where the DJ booth is, and there's actual music coming out of the DJ booth. We use that platform to try and recreate what it would be like in a room, because the closer you are to somebody on the screen, the louder they become in your ears. So we tried to use that, but it's really difficult to get off the ground, because I say to new starters, right, we're going to have a networking session. And then the first time I ran one, nobody turned up. The second time I ran one, we got 6 people. And the third one's later this month, and I'm really hoping I get more than 6. So yeah, I mean, how do we get people into those spaces, and how do we make the most of them while they're in there, particularly when it's online, I guess, is the question.
Actually, it reminds me so much of, it's no different to what we used to do. Okay, most people, if you say to them, do you like networking? Okay, they will have a view as to what does that mean. And I would say the majority of people don't like networking. Okay, so therefore saying to somebody, come and network in itself is a big turn off. So I would actually change your language, if you
Right.
like,
Yeah.
and come up with something different. Now, the way that you bring people into networking events is there's a couple of things. One is, if you just sort of say, we're just going to socialize. We can socialize by the pool. I love this software. I need to know about this software. But I love the idea of being by the bar, the DJ and the swimming pool. And I think it's absolutely brilliant. And right, so just random stuff doesn't make sense. There are those who just go, yeah, I'll talk to anyone. And there's lots of people going, yeah, do not want to do that. I mean, you've already said yourself, Matt, that, when they sort of say, right, okay, go off and talk to people, it's not what you particularly want to go and do. I mean, you don't mind doing it, you'll do it, and I should imagine you do it very successfully. However, it's not in your heart and soul. So with this small percentage of people who just go, yeah, great, dive in, they would just go, this is fantastic. But the rest of them will be going, why? Why would I want to do that? Why would I want to give up my evening or my afternoon to go and talk to people that I don't know, I'm not particularly interested in, and they probably are going to be boring, and I'm going to get stuck on a Zoom call? Do you know what I mean? So therefore, so what you look to do is actually you want to give people a reason. So if you look at when the networking events happened, conferences were happening, there was a reason why you turned up, and mostly that reason was because there's an expert in a field, or there is just a really interesting topic, or someone really different and unusual. So what you want to do is actually use the same methods by saying, okay, fine. I mean, and of course the difficulty is that it's going to be another presentation. But if you come up with something socially fun, so I don't know, let's sort of say when new starters, when they sort of turn up, I don't know if in the old days we would do, photographs underneath a banner or something. So when they first come in, they can go into a room where there's a banner and they can get their picture taken and sort of welcome to the team or something. Or whether or not you send them something, I don't know. And because people have been doing casinos and wine tasting and games and quizzes and all of those sort of things. So what you're doing is you're looking to appeal to a different side of their natures. There's a reason for it. Random stuff is still a painful experience. And I think because we're spending so much time on the internet anyway, Zooms and stuff, is that why would I want to do another Zoom call? It's just the same stuff, isn't it? But this time it's going to be more painful. Now, the other thing that we used to do as well used to have a small team that would actually look after people. I was working with another company the other day, and I was sort of saying to them, right, so when you do your Zoom calls, what you want to do is you want to make sure the team is fully briefed as to what their roles are. So you've got the leader who's going to, maybe do the presentations and perhaps manage and control the conversation. But that leaves then the rest of the team to do other things. So this is a generalism. So excuse me for saying this. But you could say the introverts are going to be great listeners. Okay. So we were on this Zoom call. I have my extroverts there and I have my introverts. So I said to the introverts there, right, what role would you like by running this conference? What do you think you would be really good at doing and you would actually enjoy doing? And one of them quite rightly turned around and said, I'd like to listen to what's going on. And all I added in was, okay, then all you've got to do is, if you're the listener, your job is to debrief the team afterwards, going, these were the patterns, these were the trends, these were the themes of conversations. So then they can listen actively for the team, allowing the leader to do all the interaction and not worry about picking up. So we come back to what, if you've got a few people who are going to manage this, what could the team do that is plays to their strengths, that enables them, because then you could have people who are going to sit at the bar, for example, who then welcome somebody in, what would you like to drink? Get yourself a G&T or whatever it's going to be. But their job is to make the introductions, is to make people feel at ease. No different to what we used to do.
So Heather, moving on a little bit now, thinking about some of the relationships that we may well forge through these kind of online networking meetings, whether it's at conferences or networking events or the induction event that Matt's been talking about. How are you then maintaining these kind of online relationships with people that you've potentially never met in person?
I think that's a really good question, actually. We've taken a bit of time to sort of think through what we're going to do to stay in touch. Now, I confess I am more of a LinkedIn fan than I am on any other platforms. I'm not into Twitter particularly. I don't do the other stuff. So what we do is we've done a couple of surveys. We've launched a couple of guidebooks, and I'm doing a series of interviews at the moment. We're just about to start another second series of interviews, so looking at different angles. And we do a lot of posts on LinkedIn. And then based on those posts, we then go back in to see who's liked, who's commented. And then based on who's liked and commented, then I then pick those up, create new conversations, turn those into Zoom coffees. We come back to what's the purpose of networking in the first place? And primarily it is to get to a one-to-one. Now, it's not just that, is it? I want to get to a one-to-one because I want to influence somebody. I want to talk to somebody. I want to offer some suggestions. Now, obviously, I run a business, and therefore I'm trying to sell something, or I'm looking to increase my profile, my credibility, myself as a thought leader. So that's my objective in developing any relationship. And I've made this normal, that it's no different through the screen as it was in the face-to-face. So we would still have a level of activity. It's just that it's all taken place through the Zoom. But I come back to, if my activity is online in the first place through LinkedIn, doing posts and whatever, what I'm doing is I'm picking up the same people and inviting them for a coffee. So my trick is, and I know this is a podcast, but my trick is that if I say to somebody, let's have a Zoom coffee, I bring my cup, my glass, and I make sure that I purposely drink as though I was at a Costa or a Nero's or a Starbucks, but I would turn this into a chat rather than having, if you like, my pen and paper ready, going, right, okay, I'll take some notes and we'll crack on. So you set the scene based on what you're trying to achieve. Does that make sense? Because there is no difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we have different types of meetings now at work, and the Friday morning one is very much bring your coffee, and it sets the scene. It lets people off the hook. They don't need to talk about work. So no, I definitely know what you're talking about. Yeah,
but if you look at right, so if you want to talk to your boss, so you've got peer-to-peer. So it's so important that people just don't get lost doing work. And again, I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat myself so many times here today. Most people, when they were at work in the office, would just work. They would have lunch with their best mate, and they would go for a coffee chat with their best mate in the office. And then there was that slight random stuff that would happen. One talks about elevator conversations. Well, to be honest, they never happen because 20 people get into a lift. It's not one person. It's not the boss. I always think it's the most stupidest thing in the world, that is. And when companies used to say to me, right, can you do the elevator pitch? I go, no. I used to actually say to the bosses saying, right, do you really want someone to come in? And they go, Matt, you're my boss. I am now going to do my thing on you, right? No boss wants that. So anyway, so there are some things just complete myths in the office, but there were the opportunities for those random times you could just pop into someone's office and say, listen, boss, can I have a quick chat? Okay. But most meetings were scheduled. So that's what I mean. You've got to normalize what was already going on. We've built up into this big bubble of rainbow-coloured, rose-coloured thinking, and it's nonsense. We didn't have lots of random stuff. They were the odd random things. So the only difference is now is you turn around and say to your boss, it'd be great to do a catch up. Can we get a Zoom coffee in? Okay. Now the only difference is that you've got to get more to the point nowadays than what you may have done before. But trust me, if you walked into your boss's office and they'd had their head down and you walked in saying, can I get 2 minutes? Your boss is going to say, yeah, sure. What do you want? So in my head, I'm going, why have we made this different?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, of course, there are lots of situations where it is much more random, and that's fine. But you just say to your boss or whoever, you've got to go out of your way to make sure it happens. That's the bit that's important. And that was just as people who were reluctant to do it were just as reluctant in the office as they were doing it on this one.
Yeah, definitely. I really agree with what you've been saying there, particularly about this myth about these random events. There was something on campus which did happen though, because campus was such a large part of Liverpool. You could walk for like 15 minutes and you'd still be on campus to try and get from one meeting to another. So there was a bit of there was something that happened, and I think my director calls it as the punctuation of the day, where you might be leaving a meeting in one place, walking to your office or to your base or to another meeting, and you would have a conversation along the way. And your conversation was about what you've just been experiencing in a meeting. And actually what you were doing is, without even realizing it, you were helping to digest what had happened and to formulate your actions and things like that. So there was a real value to that activity, which has been lost. It's particularly for people in senior positions, because like my manager at the moment just bounces from one to the next with very little break in between. And she's very keen on producing and doing some sort of introduction to a meeting, which isn't just about the topic. She tries to break in and have that informal bit. But when you're just going from one to the next, you yourself are not able to process what's happening. And there's no commute either for me. So I used to commute into Liverpool, and that's gone. So I am not digesting the information of the day. I just go from work, and then I'm in the kitchen and I'm at home. So I think that there is something there, and I don't know how to recreate that in an online world.
I think a little bit now we're moving though in that direction, aren't we, Matt? Because like straight away when we all moved home, I totally agree with what you've just said. But often now after a meeting, after a podcast recording, even you and I'll Teams each other, won't we, just for 10 minutes to go, okay, was that good? Do we need to, there is that kind of processing, which I totally get not everyone's doing. But I wonder if even on that now, are we trying to create those opportunities for processing? I don't know. I know of quite a few, like our colleague Rianne the other day, we had quite an important meeting, and then I Teamsed her straight afterwards just so we could debrief it a bit and check we were happy with how things had been left and the actions. We agreed the actions, and I don't know. I wonder if we're trying to compensate for that a bit. Anyway, Heather, I don't know what you think on that.
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. I 100% agree with that. So I used to sort of say to people, when you're going to go to a meeting, get there 5 minutes earlier so you could go and talk to somebody that you need to target, go and speak to, whatever. And then afterwards, make sure that you link arms, so to speak, with somebody that you really want to sort of get that debriefing part with, catch up with. And you're absolutely right. That's that informality, that light debrief, chatty sort of thing has absolutely, definitely gone. And I'm shocked when I'm talking to some of my senior executives that they're on 20 to 30 phone calls a day. I have to sort of say it is insane, and I think it is mentally wrong for companies to do that to their staff. There's a lady that I'm working with, and she actually showed me her diary, because when she and I are doing the coaching session, she quite often turns up and she is frazzled, and she said, "Let me show you." And then says, "Share the screen." I'm like going, "Oh my goodness me!" And it is insane. Now, the company is wrong to allow that to happen. So that would be my first sort of statement. But I do agree with what you just said, Alex, over how do you then get that soft debrief before or after. So what we could do is we could look at, if there are the teams on the call, then there must be a way of saying, I tell you what, Angela, wouldn't it be great if we get 5 minutes on a separate call before the meeting? Because there's a couple of things I'd love to talk to you about. And then likewise, when during the call, because you can text people individually and sort of say, this is really interesting. I'd love to get a debrief with you afterwards because I've got these thoughts, but I don't want to say nothing just yet. So you would almost say the same stuff, but you just got to do it rather than through the non-verbal part that you would normally sort of, be able to look from, look at your mate across the table going, your eyes raise and you're sort of thinking, oh my God. And your mate would, your person across the room would go, well, let's have a chat afterwards. They would know that. Where this time you can't really do that because your language would be giving it away. So you would just do it through the texting. It's not the same, but it's as close as I think as we can get.
Heather, it's been great to chat. And this podcast is called the Developing Practice Podcast. And we like to finish each podcast in the same way, where we ask the guest for 3 or 4 take-home tips that the listener could reflect on in terms of their own personal practice. So if you could give us a few thoughts around our topic today, what would they be?
I think anyone who's working for a company, a business, a school, a university, whatever, now is a really good time to take stock of, is this what you really want? Opportunities are there for anyone who's got an idea, and the networking is there for anyone who wants to find the idea. So one of the massive benefits of networking is to be stimulated with different thinking. So one of the key things I would say here is that if you're finding yourself going through that, I don't know, is this it? There must be something else. Networking with people outside of your immediate area is vital. So go and get stimulated by different thinking. Go and sign up for something completely different. I don't know, how to make jewelry, or learn mosaicing, or become a coach, or start your own business but go and investigate it. Don't hang on thinking, well, I'll wait until, because it takes longer than you think. And if the more you start stimulating your ideas and your thinking, you'll find your life could transform overnight. So I think that would be one of them. I think the other one is something that we've been talking about quite a lot, but to give it into a sentence, is normal is what you want it to be. If it's not working out the way that you want it to be, then translate what is going on so that you make your life less stressful and more comfortable. I come back to when it all first started, I lost who I was. And, a year later, I've discovered a completely different side of me that I absolutely love and don't regret what's happened. I mean, I obviously regret the sadness of everything, but in terms of my business perspective, I don't regret it. I've learned stuff about myself that I just didn't know I had. And that is an absolute joy.
Brilliant. Thanks, Heather. Thanks for speaking with us today. It's been brilliant.
I've loved it. Absolutely loved it. And thank you guys for inviting me. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Well, I really enjoyed that conversation with Heather. There was so much within that I want to go away and think about. I loved what she was saying about how her career has developed over time. And she really challenged me to think about, in terms of career development, how we need to be clear about our expertise and our specialism, but also we need to think about what work actually brings us energy. And she talked a lot about the kind of work that brought her energy and how she's actually then developed that through her career. So I think for me, that's something that I want to think about because I think it's incredibly important.
Yeah, I really liked how she was talking about, in a face-to-face environment, about breaking into different groups and the challenges that you have as a result of that, and sort of knowing who the dominant person is and knowing the sort of group that you want to interact with at different times. She also went on to say things about going back to the way things were regards to a face-to-face type environment. And she thinks that that was making a mistake. And instead, we need to really learn from those recent experiences of being online and adapt from that to move forward.
Yeah, you're right. She talked a lot about not going back to the way things were, that if things aren't working now in this context, then we need to shift and we need to adapt. And it's then that we actually work out new things about ourselves, and that we can actually progress. Well, if you'd like to take your thinking further, we've added some further resources to the website on a specific podcast reading list. And you can access this at liverpool.ac.uk/the-academy/podcast. Also, we'd love to hear what you thought about this episode. So please do tweet us at LiveUniAcademy. And you can also find us at eLearnerMatt or at Alexandra_Owen on Twitter.
And as usual, we are really grateful for those who have taken the time to either rate or review our show in your podcast provider's app. So, in particular, if you are an Apple user, please do take the time to review our show, as it really will help others find us. Bye for now.